A gray plan to stop cheating. My four best friends with no family are Grant, Aaron, Jill, and Amber. Grant is a family law attorney. He is my doubles tennis partner and is 5 years older than me. We have discussed divorce, reconciliation, expectations, and married people's perspectives many times. We've discussed it over lunch and drinks at the tennis club, as spectators at sporting events, and during card games with other men. Aaron is a psychologist. We have done several charity events together and coach our son's basketball team and our daughter's soccer team together. Aaron is the same age as Grant and 5 years older than me, even though his son and daughter are the ages of my children and are good friends with them. We've also talked about divorce, reconciliation, expectations of men and women, and the psychology of marriage. Sometimes with Grant, if Aaron joins our card-playing group, but often just the two of us. Jill is a marriage counselor and my mixed pickleball partner. Jill is 3 years older than me and is also good friends with my wife, Marie. In addition to meeting at the pickleball court and during lunches, Jill enjoys hiking, almost always with Marie and Jill's husband, but sometimes alone. We have also discussed divorce and reconciliation many times. Amber is 3 years younger than me. I met Amber when I rescued her from a difficult situation. She claims I saved her life, but I think that's over-dramatizing it. Anyway, we became friends, and she also became friends with Marie. Amber is a public relations and media expert, and she probably has more friends and acquaintances than anyone I know. The medical organization I work for has used her for public and media relations on my recommendation a couple of times with great success. I probably talk to her on the phone or text her at least every other day, and she often comes to our house on weekends, and we chat with her and, if that happens to be the case, her beau. There is one other thing about Amber that I, the only one of her real friends, know about. She works for an elite escort part-time, i.e. call girl. How I found that out is another story I won't go into right now, but our relationship is such that she knows I don't judge her, so sometimes she even talks to me about it. She's single, but because she has a lot of acquaintances and works part-time, which she enjoys, we often talk about relationships and expectations of married people. If I were to ever cheat on Marie, I don't have the slightest desire to do so, and I can't even imagine doing so. I would want it to happen to Amber because she is the most beautiful woman I know, and she has a vibrant personality. However, even if I were prone to cheating, which I definitely am not, it would never happen to her because she would believe it could ruin or undermine our friendship, which is the last thing she wants. Going back to her belief that I once saved her life and helped her often. Her helpful advice on things she asked my opinion on. All four of my well-informed friends tell me that, while there are exceptions, the two most common situations they know of when one or both spouses cheat are when they see things with their eyes closed, so that compromise is impossible and divorce is assured. Or the offended spouse is so lacking in self-confidence that reconciliation is required anyway. Either way, the basic situation is black and white. In other words, there is no gray area. Of course, there are exceptions, but according to my friends, both spouses take the gray approach only 10–20% of the time. I've often wondered what my opinion would be if I were a cheating spouse. Grant, Aaron, and Jill have all said this to me. I've never actually discussed it with Amber, but from what she said, I'm sure her opinion would be the same. You can't know for sure until you experience it for yourself. I'd like to think I'd be one of them, of the gray thinkers, but won't know until it actually happens. All four of my friends advise me that a hard and uncompromising divorce usually doesn't work for those who don't cheat. Someone who doesn't cheat finds a better spouse only 25% of the time, and 75% of the time they either settle down or find no one suitable at all. The cheater usually doesn't have a future life full of regret and debauchery, as those who don't cheat would like to believe, but he doesn't do well in 75% of cases either. In the other 25% of cases, he is almost completely back to normal. In cases of forced reconciliation, the one who doesn't cheat usually, 60–70% of the time, feels inadequate and embarrassed by their concession if they insist, and often divorces within 5 years anyway. Again, things don't go well for both cheaters and those who don't cheat. Most don't end up living the good life, but they don't end up penniless or losing hope. The bottom line is that black or white is usually not the answer. The gray perspective has the best chance of success. My name is Sam Buttry. At the beginning of this story, I was 35 years old and working for a large medical organization as a supervisory medical laboratory specialist. I have a bachelor's degree in medical laboratory sciences from the University of Cincinnati, a master's degree in medical laboratory management from Virginia Commonwealth University, and ASCP certification. Mary Buttry, also 35 years old, and I had been married for 11 years. We had 2 children, Jimmy, age 9, and Julie, age 7. Mary worked as a pharmaceutical salesperson. That alone tells me that she is good-looking and smart because, although it is unfair, pharmaceutical companies only hire good-looking sales representatives. In addition to being smart and good-looking, Marie is in good physical shape. She and I work out either together or separately at least 4 times a week, and we both have above-average muscles and stamina. I loved being married to Marie. We seemed to suit each other in almost every way. I would rate our sex life a 9 out of 10 and our friendships a 10. Marie is a good mother who gives our children genuine love and attention without overdoing it. While we have some division of labor that is consistent with sexual expectations, for example, she does most of the cooking and I work on the lawn, we try as much as possible to divide all household chores equally and both participate in both children's activities. I attend all of Julie's ballet recitals and take her to practice more often than Marie does, and Marie takes Jimmy to all of his basketball practices, and I meet him there to coach his amateur basketball team with Aaron. And we have similar approaches to Julie, soccer, and Jimmy, band. All in all, I have a very good life. It's the life I wanted to keep. At the beginning of my story, my life was about 99% in line with what I thought was ideal. Before starting this story, I never really thought about what percentage of ideal I would choose before making major changes. One day in May, shortly after Marie's 35th birthday, I realized that I didn't have a 99% optimal lifestyle. It was a Saturday, and Marie had gotten home late from the fitness club. I had to coach Julie's soccer team in about 30 minutes, and Jimmy had to go to band practice. She got out of the car with a first aid kit and gym bag. She pushed Jimmy toward the car, gave me a quick kiss, hugged Julie, and wished me luck. After the whirlwind left the house while Julie put on a tank top and shorts, I went to move Marie's medicine cabinet, which she had practically thrown on the living room couch, and put it in her home office. Perhaps she had locked it loose, or perhaps the latch was broken when she threw it on the couch, or perhaps there was some other problem. But when I hastily picked it up to put it away, the case opened and papers spilled out. Fortunately, the medication samples were in a safe place in her case and not scattered, as I wouldn't have known where to put them. The papers were all scattered, so I didn't think it would be important to put them in order. When I picked up the papers scattered on the floor mixed in with her brochures and order forms, I found 4 cards. 1 was a juicy greeting card from me. 2 were homemade cards from the kids, and the 4th was a sexy card that said, "Happy birthday, pizza lover," with a colorful picture of a slice of pepperoni pizza on the front and Playmate on the inside, with the words "most fun" handwritten between the and Playmate, and the shadow of a sexy female figure leaning over it. Inside was the signature, "My pleasure, Rob." I was stunned, although I didn't really know who Rob was, I suspected. For the past 2 months or so, Marie had been training a new sales rep named Rob, I forget his last name, on how to take over some of her territory, while she took over most of the territory of the sales rep who got pregnant and left. I took a picture of the outside and inside of Rob's card, then I put all the papers back in Marie's briefcase and the cards under the rest of the paperwork. I closed the case tightly and set it back on the living room couch instead of taking it to Marie's office. It only took 5 minutes on Marie's local company website to recognize his name and picture, Robert Driscoll. He looked no more than 25 years old. He was good-looking, as all representatives of the pharmaceutical industry are, maybe even a little better looking than usual for such a representative. In fact, he looked a lot like the guy Marie had dated when I'd knocked her for a loop, according to her. By then, Julia was itching to get to the game as soon as possible, so we got in my car and sped off. I kept up a conversation with her the whole way to distract myself from what I had just learned, which shook me to the core. I somehow managed to handle Julie's game without getting confused, embarrassing myself or acting like the Sphinx, although I relied on Aaron more than usual for substitutions and strategy. All the girls were happy when we won 4-3, always good when games are competitive and both teams score. Afterward, Aaron and his daughter, Julie, and I, Julie's best friend on our team, and a girl on the other team who was good friends with Aaron's daughter, went out for milkshakes. While everyone was having fun at the table sipping milkshakes, I excused myself and called Grant's cell phone. Grant answered after the first ringtone. "Boris, you better not miss our doubles match tomorrow," he answered without even saying hello. He calls me Boris, referring to Boris Becker, the former German professional who is considered the 11th best men's tennis player of all time. I hope he calls me that because he thinks I look a lot like Becker, 190 centimeters tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, very attractive. Or because of my tennis abilities. Not because Boris was convicted of tax evasion after he retired. No, it's not, asshole. How do I hire you to just ask some questions so we have an attorney-client relationship and you can't divulge those questions to others? I asked. Is this not a joke? He replied after a pause of a few seconds. No, I answered a little more sharply than I intended. Okay, we have come to a verbal agreement on this now. Tomorrow you give me $1 after our doubles match and I'll email you the contract to sign on Monday, okay? Agreed, I quickly parried. Good. What questions? Just one so far. Who would you recommend as the best private investigator? After a meaningful pause, he asked, Why do you want to know? At the moment, you have no right to ask me questions, only to answer them. All right, he mumbled. Wesley Associates. I'll give you one of their cards tomorrow. Thanks, I said. I'll be ready for tennis at 8 a.m. Grab your A-game. Whereupon I hung up the phone. That evening, Marie behaved perfectly normal for a Saturday afternoon with both the kids and me, including, after the kids went to bed, making it clear that she wanted to get a couple of lovemaking sessions in. I think I'm really good at compartmentalizing things because I really performed well. Although I almost slept through the first set the next morning in doubles tennis, I came to my senses during the second set and displayed my most aggressive tennis in years, hitting the ball like it was Rob Driscoll's head, and Grant and I beat a good team 2-6, 6-3. 6-1. Grant actually gave me a Wesley Associates card, and I gave him $1. Grant didn't ask any questions, but as we left the court, he sincerely said, If you need to talk, whether as your attorney or as a friend, let me know. I thanked him and drove home. That night, Marie and I practically repeated last night's imitation of lovemaking. Wesley Associates, represented by operatives Annabelle Watson and William Bennett, justified Grant's recommendation of them. Given the information I gave them, they provided me with a full report within 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I cannot say that the report was just as I wanted it, but it was pretty much what I expected, 10 days after I got the private investigators involved in the case. After Marie and Rob finished a sales consultation with a doctor in the suburbs, about 25 kilometers from our house, they decided to have lunch at a motel rather than Olive Garden. They stayed in room 117 for 1 hour and 3 minutes. Wesley has high-tech equipment, and Annabelle and William are smart and sneaky. So I have some photos taken through a window where the curtains were not fully drawn and lots of audio recordings. After surreptitiously examining the evidence and paying my $4,215 bill, I concluded that the relationship between the two was entertaining. I don't want to explain in detail why, but a couple reasons were that they almost never kissed, as far as I could tell from the audio recording, and certainly never with Annabelle or William visually watching, and that Marie never said a negative word about me. In fact, some things were positive, and Rob never criticized his girlfriend. To confirm my conclusion, I called Annabelle and William after the test and told them what conclusion I had come to. I asked if they agreed with their experience. That's exactly what it seemed to me during the 2 weeks I'd been watching them. And not just at the motel, Annabelle stated. I have to agree with her, William interjected. To double-check, I made an appointment with a female marriage counselor, a friend of Jill's whom I'd met several times. I didn't want to drag Jill into this, and shared with her the information I had without giving her, or Annabelle or William, my, or Annabelle's or William's opinion. After expressing a number of caveats to cover her ass, she agreed with my assessment. This was especially important because, frankly, I had to communicate that it made absolutely no difference in how Marie treated me, the kids, or any of our mutual friends. Now that I had the information I needed, the question became, what to do? I decided to take the gray approach that all 4 of my closest non-family friends had recommended long before my problem arose. This involved looking at how much my optimal life had deteriorated. What was better for me? What was better for my children? What was better for my parents and friends? And even what was better for Marie? I came to the following conclusions. 1. I could not allow Marie's affair with Rob to continue. 2. If I talked to Marie directly, it would definitely hurt our future relationship. We would never be 99% whole again. If we worked on it, we could go back to 80%. Maybe if we were lucky, 85%, but never 99%. 3. Children should never have to find out. Although they were too young to realize it, there would obviously come a day when they would know. I didn't want that day to ever come. 4. I didn't want to hurt Marie physically, emotionally, or mentally, except that I wanted her to think that I might find out, even if I never confronted her face to face, so that she would experience fear for a long time. 5. I wanted Rob to pay. I had an instinctive caveman reaction to him. What I really wanted, even though nothing good would ever come of it, was to beat the crap out of him. I wanted to crush his testicles with a couple of swift blows with steel-toed boots, like in some online fantasy, but I knew it would have to be more subtle but prolonged. It couldn't entail telling his girlfriend about it, because then Marie would eventually find out. 6. If I could get back at Rob, and if I could plant the seeds of friendship with Marie, who I knew but never confronted or accused, and she never knew for sure, then I could see my life eventually return to 90% or more optimal, and 100% for the kids. 7. I wanted to act quickly. I didn't want another bond to develop between Marie and Rob. Now that I had all the parameters set, the question became, what exactly to do? Because I work for a medical company and run a lab, I know a lot about drugs, viruses, bacteria, and other substances that get into the bloodstream and how they affect the human body. After reviewing all the information I had, my first assumption proved to be correct. I would infect Rob with both herpes simplex virus 1, HSV1, and herpes virus 2, HSV2. Both viruses can manifest within 2 to 12 days. If a particularly virulent strain of HSV1 is used, you can be almost certain that it will manifest externally within 2-4 days. I needed to find a way to infect Rob so that he would show obvious symptoms within 2-4 days, while still being sure that Marie was not infected. I hired Annabelle and William again to scrutinize Rob and try to find a way to make sure Marie never had a chance to get infected from him until he had obvious symptoms. Marie is medically savvy enough to easily recognize HGH1 and would avoid it like the plague and be nervous too. As it turned out, everything went almost perfectly. The only thing that didn't work out perfectly was that I couldn't stop Marie and Rob from having another and last fun outing. They had another one 13 days after the first, witnessed by Annabelle and William. This time it was after their last call on Tuesday at another doctor's office in the suburbs, at the Holiday Inn Express in room 142. This time they were in the room for 57 minutes, and there was good audio, but only 2 fuzzy pictures. The audio was essentially no different than the first time and did not contradict my conclusion of entertaining love. The Thursday after the Tuesday meeting, Rob was in the club's locker room playing squash. An operative from out of town, whom I had arranged and paid online, but whom I had never had to meet in person, came across Rob in the locker room and injected him with high concentrations of HGH1 and HGH2. That Friday, I arranged a problem in my office and with one of the guys to keep Marie home. She only had 2 appointments scheduled and had almost finished training Rob so he could handle them on his own. I also lied about winning a contest for a trip to Las Vegas, which I surprised Marie with. Marie and I unexpectedly went on vacation Saturday through Wednesday the following week. She never saw Rob or even contacted him over the weekend. To make the unexpected vacation win possible, I had arranged in advance with Marie's secretary to move the appointments from Monday to Wednesday, and for her parents and my parents to take turns babysitting, driving the kids to weekend activities, and sending them to and from school on weekdays. The short trip to Vegas had the added benefit of improving Marie and I's sexual compatibility, which was no shortage from the start, although I still had trouble putting her relationship with Rob out of my mind. Even though I didn't need them for normal lovemaking with Marie, I wanted to give her the most sexual experience of her life, so I bought some little blue pills. In the 4 nights and 5 days we spent in Vegas, Marie and I made love more times than in any week in our lives before. Thursday morning after our trip to Vegas, Marie left for work as happy as I had ever seen her. Thursday night she returned agitated and almost sullen. Of course I knew why. She had seen the herpes rashes on Rob's face. Annabelle had taken a couple good pictures, but I hadn't told her anything about my out-of-town operative. Over the next week, Marie looked like a long-tailed cat in a rocking chair factory. It was clear that she had gotten a blood test, obviously not from my lab, although that's where Rob had gotten his blood drawn, and was waiting for the results. Through careful investigation, as well as a bug on her phone, I found out that she was no longer in a relationship with Rob. In fact, Rob was done. I guess the pharmaceutical company doesn't like their sales reps calling with herpetic rashes on their faces. Apparently, Rob recognized the symptoms as soon as he had his first attack and started treatment right away. So maybe it won't ruin his life forever. Either way, I could care less. I could tell what day Marie's blood tests came back negative. It was a Wednesday, a week after our trip to Vegas. She looked like she was relieved more than anything. That night she came on to me. She had been refusing love ever since we got back from Vegas, first complaining about sexual fatigue from our lovemaking sessions there, and then about an illness she didn't want me to catch that even caused her to sleep in the guest room. For the next 2 weeks, I discreetly tormented her by letting her overhear conversations about someone being fired from her office because of herpes. She didn't ask how I found out, though she didn't tell me because the medical community is small and, as indicated earlier, my lab ran Rob's blood tests. Over the next few weeks, she would occasionally look at me oddly, wondering what I knew, but it had no effect on her actions. In fact, she seemed to be trying to be even more affectionate and sexually available than usual. You may wonder how I spent all the money I had to spend without Marie finding out about it. The answer is pretty simple. Even though, considering the private investigators, the operative from out of town, the trip to Vegas I supposedly won, and a host of other unforeseen expenses, it cost me over $25,000. I borrowed the money from Amber, interest-free, with the stipulation that I gradually pay it back over 30 months. I could easily hide it for 30 months, but I couldn't hide it for 6 weeks. However, before Amber agreed to lend me the money, there was one caveat. She wanted to know why, and she promised not to tell anyone about it. I trusted her, especially since she still held on to the same idea that I'd saved her life, even though, in my opinion, that wasn't true. What I'd gotten her out of was serious business and required me to risk my safety, so I told her. I tried to tell her only the most basic things, but she ended up pulling the whole story out of me over 2 days, while Marie and the kids were on a short trip with her parents. I also told her that I would probably give up on Mary once the kids went off to college if I couldn't completely forgive her. When she put $25,000 in cash in front of me, she said, "Here's the deal. You pay it back gradually over 30 months, but it's not over. By the time Julie goes to college, which will be in 11 years, I'll have quit my escort job a few years before that. If you dump Marie, you and I will become a couple, and we'll see if we can be compatible in the long run." Agreed? I couldn't believe what she just said. It meant that she had tender feelings for me, and while she would never try to ruin my marriage if I did it on my own, she wanted to try me. "But you're younger than me and you could get married sooner," I muttered. "Younger doesn't mean anything. The chances of me marrying someone other than you are slim. But if it happens, we'll reevaluate at that time. So is it a deal? Or should I put that money back under the mattress?" After a pause, I said, "Deal." Amber then kissed me on the lips for the first time in her life. It wasn't a light kiss. It was a kiss that set off a fire alarm. When she interrupted it, my knees buckled. "No more kissing until Julie goes to college," she grinned, and then shoved some of the cash down my pants, making sure to pet me, poured the rest on the table, and leisurely walked out. It's been 8 years since Rob got herpes and Marie got religion, so to speak. I now truly believe that my life is 90+% optimal, and I'm very glad, especially considering how well my children are developing, that I took a gray, aka balanced, approach, rather than a black or white one. Sometimes I almost feel ashamed that I gave Rob herpes and got him fired because of it. Almost. The reason I ultimately don't feel guilty is that if I hadn't done something about Marie's entertaining love affair with him because of my temper, I would never have been able to take the gray approach. Will I dump Marie when Julie goes to college? At this point, I can't say for sure. I do know that Amber remains in the background. Sure enough, I paid off her loan in less than 30 months and gave her a diamond tennis bracelet as a final payment. Since then, I've never seen her without the bracelet. Just 2 days ago, when we were hiking with a group of other people, including Marie, when we fell behind the rest of the group, Amber said to me at one point, "In case you were wondering, I quit my job as an escort." I smiled at her and she smiled back. "Only 3 more years until Julie goes to college," she grinned. I then received the second hot kiss of my life from her, and we quickly caught up with the rest of the campers. The end!